So everyone, thank you so much. People are going to keep trickling in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Come on in. I'm going to get started on the presentation right now. That we are here to talk about divesting from war. I'm so excited about this presentation. I think this is going to be absolutely one of the most important ones that I've given so far. So I'm just so happy to be able to do this. And thank you so much to everyone for taking time out of your day. Welcome. It warms my heart. I can't tell you how much it means to me that people have joined and are coming here to be able to talk about divestment with me, taking time out of your busy day, whether it's lunchtime for you, whether you're on the East Coast and it's sort of early afternoon, or whether you're on the West Coast and hopefully have a really strong cup of coffee and are getting nice and caffeinated. I've got a great lecture for you today. Many of you know me. I see a lot of familiar names in the chat here, and really be able to happy here. Okay, perfect. Heather has a little note. Okay, yeah, that's no problem. So really want to introduce myself to those of you who don't know me. My name is Tim Nash. I'm on a mission to help 1 million Canadians invest intentionally. This is my mission, is to help people align their investments with their values. Quick backstory on me is that I grew up in London, Ontario with my dad in the investment industry. So I grew up around stocks and bonds, always had a good brain for finance. I studied economics and philosophy out on the East Coast in Halifax. I was always kind of a weirdo in those classes, and I had a lot of tough questions about the economic system and the models that I was learning. So I didn't get a lot of answers from my profs, so I went to Sweden and I did my master's in sustainability. I did my thesis focused on this topic of sustainable investing back in 2008. I came back to Canada ready to take the investment world by storm and graduated straight into the crash. So that was the start of my entrepreneurial journey. I started my first business in 2008. I've been at it ever since. It's been over 15 years now. And it really probably about 7 or 8 years ago is when I kind of went full time into being a financial planner. So I have my CFP designation. I'm a certified financial planner. I also am a responsible investment specialist. I have my RIS designation, and my mission is to help Canadians invest intentionally and figure out how to sort of put their money where their values are. And that's what we're going to be doing today. I always start with some acknowledgements, and this lecture, this presentation is probably one of the toughest ones for me in terms of coming up with these acknowledgements, because there's a lot to be said here. So I think what I want to start by doing is acknowledging how hard it is to talk about human rights and about divesting from war. That even just putting this webinar together and putting it on my feed, I got a lot of blowback. I got some really nice warm messages, but I also had some people who were a little bit upset with me. And I think that this pales in comparison to the pushback that people who are actually in the encampments and people who are actually protesting right now and pushing for divestment from war, from what they are facing. So I do want to be clear that I do support the student protests right now that are pushing for divestment from war, that are pushing for human rights in Gaza and Palestine. I want to acknowledge that I support human rights for all people, that there are multiple conflicts happening all over the world. I support human rights for people in Ukraine and people in Haiti, and for people in Sudan, and for indigenous peoples, and for future generations who are going to be impacted by all of these things. That to me, human rights for everyone is a core fundamental value. And I just want to acknowledge the struggle for people who push for human rights, and for the people who are sticking their necks out and who are protesting and are speaking truth to power. It is not easy. And so just really want to acknowledge that I am standing on the shoulders of giants, that, the people who have done this work before me, that I've learned from, that the protesters that are putting so much at risk right now, I just want to acknowledge their work and know that, really I stand in support for them and really want to be clear that today, the space that I'm creating here, this is not a space to debate history or to debate geopolitics. There are other spaces for that. That this is really a space to talk about divestment, to talk about aligning your investments with your values. I want to go back to my mission that, this isn't about my values. It doesn't matter sort of what I think. This is about your values, that I want you to invest intentionally according to your values, that's why we're here today. That said, I know this is a very, very heated issue, right? So I really am asking for you to be civil and to be respectful in the chat. That really I want, things out of love and out of peace, and really, I want to take this passion and turn it into action. So let's focus on being actionable and supportive. And really, I'm just not going to tolerate anything, any misbehavior in the chat, any hate speech, anyone that's kind of coming at ad hominem attacks. Nope. You'll get a warning, and then we'll be able to boot you out of the chat if we need to. Yamini, who is a colleague of mine who's helping me out on this, is going to be there in the chat. Yamini, do you want to say a quick hi to people?
Hello, everyone. You might have seen my emails. I just started working with Tim about a few months ago, and I'm very excited for this topic, and I'm so pleased to see all the engagement in the chat already. So keep that up.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Yamini. Really appreciate all your help. Yamini's going to be posting links throughout. So as I talk about things, if you want sort of the link to be able to follow it as well. We are recording this, so we'll make the recording available afterwards. So if you have to hop out, no worries whatsoever. But I'm just so grateful that y'all could join me today. I'm really excited for this presentation. So, often when it comes to talking about our investments, people, when it comes to investing, tend to have a lot of emotions around their investments, and overwhelming what I hear from people are feelings of guilt and shame about what's in their investments, but maybe how they haven't taken action yet, right? And so I'm just here to remind you right at the start that the best time to plant a tree was 30 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today. That really, whatever we're feeling around, what's going on with our money, with our situation, wherever you are on your investment journey, let's accept that. Let's set that aside. Let's move through that. And let's talk about how to be able to take action going forward. That the second best time to plant a tree is today. So I really want to focus on this, actionable items and, what we can do going forward. The agenda for today, I have a great presentation lined up for you. We're going to start with a quick little history of divestment. People have been doing this for a long time. This is not a new idea, so I think it's really helpful to be able to go through some context there. The piece that I'm most excited about is I have some really cool research that is going to help you look up companies and do research in terms of what's inside your portfolio and what are the companies that are complicit in war. How do we identify them? And then, really going to be focused at the end on how to take action, give you some action items, some next steps to be able to help you, take control of your portfolio and invest according to your values. So that's what we've got for today. There will be a Q&A at the end. So by all means, throw questions in the chat as we go. I'll do my best to keep an eye on things. If it pertains to what I'm talking about right now, I'll answer the question right away. Otherwise, I might sort of kick it to the end. I do want to be respectful of people's time, especially during the sort of workday today. So, I am going to try to keep it to an hour, but I'm happy to stick around for the Q&A. Q&A can go as long as we want. If y'all want to nerd out with me and get deeper into the research that I'm going to show you, I am so here for that. But let's get through the presentation and then we can have a nice big Q&A at the end. All right, so divestment. So when it comes to divestment, people have been doing this for a very, very long time. It really did start with religious communities. So in the US, Quakers, here in Canada, Mennonites, and all around the world, Sharia compliant investors, right? That this has been happening for a very, very, very long time. They've been the absolute leaders in this, have been doing it for decades, centuries, like probably millennia before we had a modern day stock market. People were investing ethically. They would go out of their way to avoid investing in quote unquote sin sectors because it started within the religious communities. That is why we sort of use this language when it comes to divestment. The starting points that are kind of across the board are things like alcohol, gambling, weapons, and tobacco, right? Generally speaking, across the board for religious communities. With Sharia compliant investors, you can add to this pork producers. There's an interesting thing around earning interest and usury. And so really interesting, history there. More recently, we've started to see a lot of calls for divestment around fossil fuels, and then also more social issues, human rights issues around things like for-profit prisons and surveillance. So we're going to be talking about all of these today to varying degrees, but this really is sort of like the history that it started with these sin sectors, and then, more and more is moving towards human rights issues. That a lot of the biggest movement when it comes to divestment, probably the thing that most people point towards as the biggest success of divestment is divesting from South Africa and apartheid. That there was a national movement that happened in the US, but around the world, to divest from South Africa. This started in sort of the late 70s. It really gained momentum throughout the 80s. I've got a really cool little article here from the University of California. They did a little a mini podcast. So for you podcast listeners, Yamini just kind of threw it in the chat there. But if you're curious about listening to that, really, really cool history. This was on University of California, Berkeley, and just really interesting story about how they were leaders when it came to this divestment movement, and how Nelson Mandela, when he did a sort of tour of the US in 1990, made a point of stopping by UC Berkeley to thank students and protesters for divestment. That Nelson Mandela himself said that this was instrumental in ending apartheid and putting pressure on South African government. So, to me, this is just a really, really cool bit of history around the divestment movement. Obviously, it wasn't just Berkeley. You can see here, I think this is like the Massachusetts pension, calling for divestment there. This is a photo from Harvard, really pushing for divestment. Fascinating to see kind of how long it took in terms of the number of institutions that actually took the steps to divest from South Africa. Only 53 institutions had divested in 1984, whereas 155 divested by 1988. That these things, there is momentum to these things, that it's hard to be a first mover, as a lot of the student protests are seeing right now. It's hard to be a first mover, but these ideas do tend to catch on, they do tend to spread, and we do start to see a lot more movement. And obviously this is part of that change theory, is moving towards these kind of psychological tipping points. Just further in terms of like the impact of that divestment movement. So this is an article by Desmond Tutu, written in 2002, that, you can see the end of apartheid stands as one of the crowning accomplishments of the last century, but we would not have succeeded without the help of international pressure. There is no greater testament to the basic dignity of ordinary people everywhere than the divestment movement of the 1980s. This is important work. It's worked in the past. Let's make it work again. The next probably sort of biggest movement in terms of divestment is talking about tobacco-free portfolios. They're trying to get rid of tobacco from investment portfolios. This started again, I would say sort of like early 90s-ish is when there was more and more of a movement to divest from tobacco companies. And it was so interesting because, again, this coincided with, there's this whole movement. Like, I remember for me, when I started university, that it had just been in the last year or two that smoking inside the campus bar was banned. Right. So really, really interesting to be able to see that this idea that divestment, it's not a standalone issue, that it can be used in conjunction with other issues to sort of denormalize, or in this case, it was really about stigmatizing tobacco use. So a lot of campaigns around secondhand smoke and how it really, affected people who weren't smokers that impact of secondhand smoke. And no doubt that getting rid of smoking, remember, like we used to go to restaurants and there would be like the smoking section and the non-smoking section, and there wasn't even a divider. Like it was kind of wild. And so, you know, again, this is about diversity of tactics, that divestment is really powerful when used in conjunction with other approaches and other protest movements and other demands. But, you know, if we're profiting from the sale of these things, you know, that can be a deterrent to actually having that social change. So divestment, certainly a big part of this. Think about the sort of sea change in social norms. Acceptance about smoking then versus now, no question, you know, there's a much higher stigma now associated with tobacco than there was even, you know, 20, 25 years ago. Very interesting. Russell says in the chat, I believe PM Mulrooney was strong on South Africa divestment when Reagan in the US and Thatcher in the UK were very much against divestment. Very interesting. You know, so obviously there is the political aspect of this as well, that, you know, and there's going to be blowback. Anytime for each of these movements, there was blowback each and every time. You know, when it comes to tobacco, so this is OP Trust announced that they divest from tobacco. It took them until I think 2017. OP Trust is the pension plan for a lot of Ontario public sector employees, including nurses. So, you know, nurses pushing for divestment from tobacco, it took them until 2017 to actually divest. So this is not something that happens overnight. This is very much a slow grind. But again, this is something that I think that we can continue to push for. More recently, we have the fossil fuel divestments. I mean, this is certainly has been a huge part of my activism over the last sort of 10, 15 years, that an organization called 350.org really brought to light this idea of fossil fuel divestment. This has been a massive movement, a lot of discussion around this. Quite successful in terms of, again, stigmatizing the fossil fuel industry and impacting their economic standing. You know, lots of action. Certainly happy to talk a lot about fossil fuel divestment, some of the wins, some of the trade-offs that are involved. A lot of the sectors we've talked about so far are really small slices of the overall market. Fossil fuels, this is a pretty big chunk of the overall stock market. So this is probably one of the bigger campaigns that this is, at least in terms of the what we're divesting from. There are a lot of companies on this list. And then obviously why we're here today is that there are massive protests happening right now that really, you know, the BDS movement, boycott, divest, and sanction against Israel. This was started in sort of the early 2000s, really rose to prominence in about 2015. There was a big push for it. And then now, I mean, oh my goodness, this is a list of universities with encampments. This is as of a week ago, but like, oh, holy crap, this is incredible. The fact that there were this many protests taking place. To me, this is just so amazing and inspiring in so many different ways, that really this is a moment, that we are at a moment in history right now where once again, students are speaking up, they're speaking truth to power and really calling for divestment from war, which, you know, is something that I just wholeheartedly support. Special shout out to my local university, University of Toronto. This is Erin Mackey. If anyone has heard her on the news, oh my goodness, what an incredible spokesperson. Has just been, you know, sort of unrelenting in terms of calling for divestment on this issue. If there is anyone in the chat who's listening right now who's involved with U of T, I would love the opportunity to be able to go there and chat with people. I have a lot of thoughts about the U of T endowment and how it's structured, and, you know, why it's going to be so hard, the sort of the battle that they're facing there, but also some ideas for solutions and how to approach the investment committees about divesting the university pension and endowment. So really want to give a huge shout out to the folks at the University of Toronto. All right, so that's really kind of the history. That's sort of the basics there. From now, what I want to do is jump into the change theory. So this is where it's like understanding with divestment, you know, what is the change theory? What are we trying to achieve? What is the impact? And let's jump into it. So first of all, my framework for sustainable investing, this is sort of a very broad topic with a whole bunch of different approaches or tactics under this sustainable investing banner. that I kind of split it up between what I call doing less evil and doing more good. Divestment falls squarely under the doing less evil banner. Okay, so now there are other approaches like ESG integration. This is environmental, social, and governance. This is the idea of these sort of sustainability scores, right? And the companies are rated based on ESG risks and, can do that. Stewardship is the idea of owning shares in companies and then pushing those companies in a sustainable direction. So some people think that's a more effective change theory, right? And so these are approaches that can be used in conjunction with each other. Although with divestment, obviously, we're not doing stewardship. We are saying, I do not want a seat at the table. I do not want to own these shares. I do not want to profit 1 penny from certain companies and sectors, that I'm going to exclude this entirely from my portfolio. Now, divestment should absolutely be done alongside ESG integration and alongside stewardship for the companies that we do still own. So these things do not, they're not mutually exclusive, that we probably want to have a mix of all of them. But for today, we are specifically talking about divestment. When it comes to the change theory, we're really trying to do 3 things when we're divesting from specific sectors. The first one is critical, which is about values alignment. This is by far and away the most important piece, as far as I'm concerned, is how critical it is for us to invest according to our values. Everyone has different values. Everyone's going to have a different line in the sand. That is just fine and dandy. My hope is that people are going to look at what's inside their portfolio and decide for themselves how they want to invest their money. There's a lot of talk about sort of, virtue signaling, things like that. And this, to me, this is so critical that this is an action step. This is a way for us to walk the talk, to ensure that inside of our portfolio are only things that are aligned with our values. It's never going to be perfect, right? Sometimes we're sort of holding our nose and, invest in some things we don't love, but as much as possible, it's important to invest according to our values. The next change theory is about cost of capital. I'm gonna talk about this a moment. I actually realize I've messed this up a little bit. This is about raising the cost of capital. I'm just gonna make that change right now, right? Because really what we're trying to do is raise the cost of capital for these companies to make it more expensive. I'm gonna go deeper into this into the next slide. And then the last point I think is really important. This is probably the biggest impact of divestment campaigns, is about stigmatizing the industry, right? This was about creating economic pressures on South Africa and on the tobacco industry and on fossil fuels, and now on companies that are complicit in war, that we want to stigmatize them. We want to call them out and let people know who those companies are and what they're doing and how they're abusing human rights. And let's call them out, and let's make it harder for them to get new employees. Let's make it harder for them to be able to operate, right? And that really it's about changing these social norms, right? And about what is acceptable behavior within our society. It's a huge part of it. Now, when it comes to cost of capital, right? The way it works is cost of capital is that companies need to raise money in order to grow their company, right? So let's say I'm an arms manufacturer and I want to build a new factory, right? To build more weapons. Well, I'm going to be raising money. And the way that we do it is we do it through the market, that I'm going to either issue shares in the stock market, or I'm going to sell bonds, which is debt. I'm going to borrow money by issuing bonds from the market. Now, the more people divest, this creates lower demand for those securities. There's less demand for the stocks. There's less demand for the bonds. This is going to push up the cost of capital for those companies. It's going to make that company more, it's going to make it more expensive for them to raise capital, right? Because investors, they're going to squeeze you. If there's lower demand for the bonds, or if there's a higher risk to investing in these companies, investors are going to squeeze that company for the highest profits. That's what they do. And so by raising the cost of capital, that's going to make that factory less profitable. That if the revenues are the same, but the costs are higher, that means it's less profitable. As these companies are less profitable, well, guess what? Fewer people are going to want to buy their stocks and bonds, right? And so more people are going to divest. So this is the idea of sort of a virtuous cycle that we're trying to do here, that we're trying to kickstart this idea to raise the cost of capital for these companies that are complicit in war. Now, it's not a perfect change theory. This is a little bit of like my individual RSP and TFSA is kind of a drop in the bucket. That's not going to have a huge impact. This really only works if a lot of people do it. And I want to be clear, like some of the research that I've seen shows that, you need about 70% to 80% of the market to divest before this really has an impact. And are we going to get 70 or 80% of the people to divest from? I'm not so sure. But it is one of these situations where, there's that sort of values alignment piece. And then as part of it, I am part of this larger movement. And specifically, if we can get these larger institutions, these university endowments, these pension plans, these multi-billion-dollar funds, that's when we really start to move the needle when it comes to this change theory. So really interesting and happy to go deeper into this cost of capital argument, but that's just kind of high level argument that those are sort of the ways that we can create change. Now, there is a bit of a trade-off here that when it comes to divestment in my own personal portfolio, there are some trade-offs. The biggest trade-off is that it's going to reduce diversification. That diversification is an absolute core value of investing, right? We want to be as diversified as possible given our ethical constraints. Now, the more strict I am with those ethical constraints, right, the less diversified I am, right? So that is absolutely a trade-off. And the less diversified I am, the more things I'm cutting away, the more my personal returns are going to deviate from the market rate of return. So the market rate of return is if you just bought the entire global stock market, no sustainability lens whatsoever, you would earn that market rate of return, just whatever the market earns. The more we divest, the more we cut things out, the more we're going to deviate from that standard rate of return. Now, some years it can be a little bit higher, some years it can be a little bit lower, but just know that there's going to be deviation, right? That if we're divesting from military companies have a really good year and their profits are high and the share price goes up, we're going to be underperforming by a little bit because we don't own those shares. At the same time, if we're successful with de-escalation and war starts to fade away, then all of a sudden those companies are going to see their share prices go down. In that case, we would outperform by a little bit. So really, it's not about necessarily outperforming or underperforming. Every year is going to be a little bit different, but the more things we divest from, the more our returns are going to deviate from those standard benchmark rates of return. The last thing I want to be clear about is that, when it comes to divesting from stocks, that we are participating in the secondary market. Okay. This means that, when I sell shares of Lockheed Martin, for example, that doesn't really impact shares of Lockheed Martin. They're not, I'm selling to another investor. In the same way, when I'm buying things, I'm buying from another investor. That the stock market operates on what we call the secondary market. And so the impact of buying or selling on the secondary market is minimal. It does impact that cost of capital. But again, I want to be clear that it's this secondary, it's kind of the Adam Smith's invisible hand of the market is what we're impacting. Right? That it's not going to be about my individual RSP and TFSA moving the needle on Lockheed Martin, that really it does come down to this notion of collective action. Now, if the goal is impact, right, divestment, probably not necessarily the best way of doing it. That's why we need the doing more good stuff, right? That if we sell our shares in companies that are complicit in war, well, the question is, well, what are we buying? And if your goal is to maximize impact, that's when I want you to do impact investments. This is why we can incorporate this doing more good part of our portfolio to have a really big positive impact if that is your goal, right? These things work in tandem with each other. I will be doing more webinars on impact investing. There's some really cool things happening in the community bond market. I love community bonds. If you're not sure what that is, sign up for my newsletter. I'm going to be doing more webinars on impact investing and specifically some really cool community bonds that are available. But that really, to me, it's about if we are going to be divesting from things, that it is so critical that we're also then investing in the good stuff. That's kind of the change theory. I can go deeper into these, if you've got questions in the Q&A, You know, really happy to go deeper in all of these. Mavis says heart, community bonds. I know, me too. Community bonds are just amazing. If we want to talk more about that, happy to in the Q&A. I can show you some really cool community bonds that are available. But again, you know, it's really important to me that we're clear with divestment about the positive sides of it, the things where we are having a positive impact and, you know, and what we can do, but also where, you know, there are some drawbacks to it. And so let's be honest with ourselves about the sort of lack of impact from divestment in those secondary markets, and the need, if we're going to divest, to be able to reinvest in things like community bonds, microfinance. There's so many cool, like, doing more good options that are available. All right, so I have some research for y'all that I have been nerding out and trying to figure out, okay, how do we actually divest from war? So before I get into the research tools, which I have for you, you know, this is just kind of like my sort of stock slide here. What evil lurks in the S&P 500? The S&P 500, these are the 500 largest companies on the US stock exchange. So this is like often viewed as sort of like one of the biggest indexes, and that, you know, 500 largest companies in the US. And this is just like a real quick sort of overview in terms of the crap that's in here, right? That obviously we do have a lot of military contractors and weapons manufacturers. We do have a lot of oil and gas, and certainly we do have tobacco companies that are in here. But I don't want to just like show you the names. I want to show you how I do my research, specifically when it comes to divesting from war. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you my tools, and Yamini is going to put these links in the chat. So if you do want to follow along. Now, I will start to say that a lot of these research tools are only available for US. This one, we can do Canadian ETFs. We can't do Canadian mutual funds in here. I'm happy a little later to explain the difference between ETFs and mutual funds for those who want, but just know that, you know, we are limited here, that in terms of the Canadian research, that this only is going to pick up ETFs, exchange traded funds. The one I want to show you, rather than the S&P 500, because that's only the 500 largest companies, the one I'm going to use for my case study is ITOT, which is the iShares Core S&P Total US Stock Market ETF. Okay, so this is not just the 500 largest companies, this is the entire US stock market. And the first layer of divestment from war, we can see down here, is that we do have these social safeguard screens. So there are companies in here that are violators of the UN Global Compact. So this is going to be human rights issues, you know, really some basic stuff here. There are also some red flags under the OECD controversies, right? So again, this is controversies maybe related to the environment, customers, human rights, labor rights, or governance, right? So these are very severe controversies, red flags. We do have tobacco, 6 tobacco companies in here, and then controversial weapons. So again, this is the first layer to divest from war. That you can see that these are companies that have any direct or indirect involvement in landmines, cluster munitions, or biological, chemical, depleted uranium, blinding laser weapons, incendiary weapons, and or non-detectable fragments. Oh my goodness. This is like stuff where, you know, civilians are going to get caught in the mix. There's going to be a lot of collateral damage from these weapons. These are what are considered controversial weapons. This is like the first layer of divestment, that obviously we want to get rid of all of these. But this doesn't go far enough for a lot of people. So the second research project or research tool I want to show you is Invest Your Values from As You Sow. Now, this is a US-based nonprofit. So sadly, I can't get data around Canadian funds, right? I have a little workaround for that, which I'll show you in a minute. But for now, again, this is a way to be able to research. I can show you ITOT, which is the total US stock market, right? This is the entire US stock market. You can see it defaults to fossil fuels here, so it gets like a D score, and it does have a lot of investments in fossil fuels here. Again, this is the entire US stock market. No surprise here, this is quite large. Like I said, fossil fuels are a pretty big part of it. We can see the list here. But what I love about it is the scorecard for other issues. And what we're going to focus on is military weapons here. So I can click on this, and this is going to give me a list of every military company inside the US stock market. You can see there's 73 military contractors. There are 29 holdings involved in nuclear weapons and 9 holdings involved in those controversial weapons, which was that first screen that we had looked at. I can click see all and I can get every single company. General Electric, we know they're involved in weapons. Honeywell, RTX, which used to be Raytheon. Eaton Corp, like this is an interesting company. This is inside some of my green funds because they make cables, right? Like electronic cables. And so, you know, renewable energy, energy transition needs a lot of cables, and they make a lot of cables for renewable energy and the green transition. But, you know, what else needs cables is weapon systems. So they also are involved in weapons. So is this a red flag for you? Is this, you know, if they cables for weapon systems, it would be pretty, it would be a little dicey. But some of them are very clear cut, you know, Lockheed Martin, right? There's no bones about this one. This is a military, you know, weapons manufacturer. Yeah, Russell says General Electric is also a big player in wind power. Absolutely. Vincent asked, where do they get their research? I thought ETFs and mutual fund holdings were proprietary. No, ETFs are very transparent, which is why I love ETFs. Mutual funds, less transparent. It's less, we can get the data, but it's usually a little bit old. Vincent, in the Q&A, if you want, I can tell you where to get that. That it's really only what we call like pooled funds that tend to be proprietary. So when it comes to, you know, these ETFs and mutual funds, which most of us are going to own, you know, that we are able to get this information. They show their receipts. So, you know, if we want to look at General Electric, you can see they're on, you know, these are different, an asset management company in Sweden has an exclusion list. You know, this is Defense News, the top 100 defense companies for 2022. This is Robeco, which is a European investment manager, and this is SRPRI, I think, Principles for Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. Very interesting. Also, so you know, they're compiling these research from various sources to be able to develop this list. Super cool, right? But wait, there's more. That we can also look into the prison industrial complex. That this to me is so fascinating. And for those who are specifically concerned about Gaza, this is where there are a lot of red flags. Some of them are big red flags that are private prison operators. This is CoreCivic and Geo Group. So these are like for-profit prisons in the US. Again, this is US companies only, but it also has all these other companies that are involved in surveillance and for-profit prisons, right? Very, very fascinating stuff, right? And again, you know, we can dig into this, that if we want to look at, let's look at Amazon, that Amazon is the world's largest online retailer and cloud storage provider. It's the largest provider of cloud computing for US immigration authorities and also supports prison and police surveillance. And it was these receipts that led me to my third and final, but in my mind, coolest research source, which is Investigate. Investigate is a project of the American Friends Service Committee. This was set up by Quakers. Remember at the start when I talked about the religious communities and the Quakers and how they were leaders? This is their research portal. It's free. And oh my goodness, it is the most detailed research I have seen here. If we look at Amazon, we can get, you know, understand that, you know, what they do here, that they do provide this cloud infrastructure service through Amazon Web Services, AWS. And this is, you know, AWS GovCloud, the largest cloud provider for the US government, right? And then from here, we can look at their immigration surveillance and deportation flights, prison surveillance. And then this is, you know, in terms of those who are really concerned about Gaza, you can see that Amazon Web Services and Google are developing a new cloud infrastructure for the Israeli government. Dubbed Project Nimbus, this is one of the largest technology projects in Israel's history. The two companies' role in the project is providing cloud infrastructure to the government, right? But that it's really, this raises some flags. And I know this was a huge issue. A lot of Google employees protested this sort of Project Nimbus, right? And you know, that you can see here, it will serve all branches of the Israeli government, including the Israeli military, right? So this is a big issue, I know, for a lot of people. So I absolutely love, yeah, Samantha, I remember as well hearing about the Google employees quitting over this. So this is where, you know, this is Google. And again, or sorry, this is Amazon, but it's also Google, you know, and like, hey, I have like a Pixel phone and I use Gmail and like, you know, so we're all hypocrites kind of thing. Like it's hard to get these companies out, but you know, this is the information that will allow you. Some people are going to say, that's okay. This is a small part of their overall business. Some people are going to say, no, this is a bridge too far, and I want to divest from this. I'm not here to tell you what to do. but I am here to provide you with the information to be able to do this type of research. And so with this research portal, I just love it so much. We can look up funds. We can also look up an Excel spreadsheet. So this is where I can, as long as I can get an Excel spreadsheet of the list of holdings from an ETF, I can upload them and look them up. But for now, let's just do our ITOT. I'm going to do a quick search here for the total US stock market. And here we have the list. This is the list of US companies, you know, in their database, 31 companies on their divestment list, 36 on the prison database, 43 on the occupations database, 47 on the borders database. There would be some overlap between them. We can see here every single company that gets flagged. To me, this is just absolutely incredible. You know, again, something like Caterpillar, right? Like they make a lot of construction machinery, but you can see its products are weaponized for the Israeli military and are used in home demolitions, in the construction of legal settlements, infrastructure, border walls, military checkpoints, and in military assaults against Palestinians, right? So this is like, you know, isn't this fascinating? Right now, some people are going to be like, well, this is equipment that's being used for nefarious purposes. I'm okay with that. It's about how you, other people are going to say, no, not one penny into Caterpillar. It's up to you. I'm just here giving you this information. Zahir asks, is this for US corporations only, or is it available for Canadian corporations as well? We can totally do this for Canadian corporations as well. So let me just show you here, you know, all the different companies here. This is going to be your list of US companies. If we want US, it's a little bit awkward. This is where I'm really helpful because I know the things to look up. So because it's only US dollar ETFs, we have to look up EWC, which is the iShares MSCI Canada ETF. Now, this is going to be a smaller list, right? But these are the companies, the Canadian companies that are on their list. Fairfax Financial, Restaurant Brands International, Thomson Reuters, and WSP Global. WSP Global did come up in a webinar that I did a little while ago. This is, you know, WSP Global, they're in a lot of green funds, right? They do a lot of water infrastructure projects and consulting on these big things. But you can see here, WSP planned and designed the Jerusalem Light Rail, which connects illegal Israeli settlements in occupied East Jerusalem with the western part of the city. So, you know, again, is this, they're like building public transit, but on occupied land. Like this is tricky. It's not easy. So, you know, we absolutely can get this information across different geographies. The reason I was using the US one is because then I do want to show you real quick, because I am conscious of the time here. I could spend hours on this, but that some of the sustainable ones, right? So if I do USXF, this is like ESG advanced, right? So this is like a sustainable one. And this is how I can do research around a greenwashing. You can see, okay, it's green flags across these, no controversial weapons, amazing, right? But when I do USXF, you know, again, this is uses this ESG advanced methodology. It's like a sustainable fund. Okay, it's pretty good on fossil fuels. Only a couple companies that really it's just a small part from fossil fuels. But we can look at prison industrial complex, and there are going to be things in here, right? There are companies in here that are considered red flags. Yum Brands. This is Taco Bell and KFC. KFC uses prison labor, right? So it's just interesting, you know, how we do this from there. I'll just do it in the last one. This is kind of like the strictest research, but this is how I do my research, you know, to understand, is there greenwashing? Does this go far enough for you? You know, this is the type of data that we can have. You know, you can see here 6 companies on the divestment list: prisons, occupations, borders, right? Again, you know, a lot of these same companies that are going to be in here, you know, Deere and Company. This is like John Deere. This is like tractors, right? But US-based manufacturing of agricultural and construction machinery, which provides all-terrain vehicles to US Border Patrol. So again, this is probably the most detailed research I have available. I'm not here to say where your line in the sand is. I'm here to be able to provide you with this information, to encourage you to invest according to your values. There are like squeaky clean versions. There are a couple that have passed through and are completely clean on this. That said, again, there are trade-offs by going in that direction. So this is my job as a financial planner, is to help you kind of figure out where your line in the sand is and help you to invest according to your values. Yassi says it looks like it would be best not to invest at all or even put money in a savings account. What are your thoughts on that? No, Yassi, I need you to invest, but we can just do it. There is a way to do it where we avoid these companies. Okay. I don't want you to feel discouraged from investing. We can totally do it. Like the one that's squeaky clean, I'll just, spoiler alert, but it's JSTC. This is the Adesina Social Justice All Cap Global ETF. This is a way to be able to invest according to, in the global stock market, but it has no holdings in companies in our database. So we can totally do it. We can totally invest. This is not a reason to not divest. I need you to invest, right? I need you to be saving for your retirement, to be, earning returns such that your money isn't getting eaten away by inflation, right? I want you to invest, right? But I just want you to do it intentionally. I want you to do it in a way that's aligned with your values. We can totally do that. It's just going to take a little bit of work, right? We're going to want to use some of this research to make sure that there's nothing in there that makes you want to gag. Samantha says, wow, this is so impressive. I love this. Paula says, LOL. Vincent says, thank you so much for these resources. This is really going to help me with my investment plans. Yes, Vincent. Mavis says, I currently have some money in Canadian government bonds. I've been wondering how problematic this is given Canadian arms deals with Israel. We can talk about that a little bit later. Lori says, thank you for putting all this together. Joe says, Tim, I'm taking so many notes. Will you share this video call so we can post it? Yes, this will go up on YouTube, Joe. Yassi says, thank you. Which retail investment platforms include these ETFs? The one I use doesn't include these. Yassi, let's talk. I know which ones do. I can totally help you with this. Most of them do, but we just need to understand how to put it together. Sarah says, this is incredible. Thank you. Will you also record the question and answer? Yes, I will, Sarah. So the whole video is going to go up on YouTube. So if anyone has to hop off, no worries whatsoever. But isn't this research cool? Oh my goodness. I could nerd out on this stuff so hard. I'm going to stop there to get to my final points. AJ asks, can you share any Palestinian impact investments? I'm going to an event tomorrow. I might be able to get a little more information. It's like the Toronto Palestine Impact Palestine Collective, something like that. So stay tuned. Let me see if I can dig anything up for that. So really, hopefully this is help. Roy Culpepper in the Q&A. Where do the big banks come out? So banks are tricky. Let me maybe get to that in a Q&A. Research tool to search up what the big banks are investing in. I do. Let me get through my presentation and then maybe we can talk about the big banks, Zahira. I'm happy to go there and talk about the big banks. But for now, I think let me just kind of finish the presentation because I know some people are going to have to hop off at the hour. So I can't tell you how grateful I am that you all want to nerd out with me. So I love this so much. So I do have a little gift for you. So as part of this, I do want to make a donation to charities. We can do multiple charities. I'm going to do $5 for every live attendee. So we've got 50 people who are here live. So I'm happy to donate $250 to organizations. Last webinar we did, what was it? UNRWA and Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières. So I want you to put in the chat, what are some of the nonprofits that you want me to support? We'll go through the chat afterwards. And, for as many people, at least $250 is what we're going to be donating here. $5 just for you coming and doing this webinar. For those who are on YouTube, I'm going to give $1 for every YouTube like, comment, and subscribe. So, really happy. Toronto Palestine Film Festival. Oh, that is a local organization I would love to support. So put your favorite nonprofits in the chat if there are groups that you want me to support, or if, you want me to do UNRWA or Doctors Without Borders, put a little vote for them. You can like other people's comments that please, I want to know what organizations do you support that you want me to support, that, this is my gift to you for being at this webinar. I'm so honored that you are here. And this is my way of saying thanks for coming and showing up and doing this with me. Yeah, I'm seeing some really cool one. Middle Eastern Children's Alliance, Mennonite Central Committee. Oh my goodness, the Mennonites, Kevin, have been such leaders here. Islamic Relief, community peacemaker teams, Gaza Sunbirds. Oh my goodness, so many cool orgs. Toronto Community Justice Funds, Toronto Palestine Film Fest gets another one. UNFPA supporting mothers and babies in Palestine and war zones around the world. Oh my goodness, this is just so incredible. Keep putting organizations in, if you're on YouTube, put it in the comments. We will absolutely support as many of these organizations as we possibly can. So from here, I just want to take a moment to reflect on, what is the world that you want to live in? What does this mean to you? Put it in the chat. I want to hear from you. What's the world that you want to live in? What are you investing for? That for me, it's about, basic fundamental human rights and the ability for people to meet their human needs without compromising the ability for other people to meet their human needs. That is the vision for social sustainability that I ascribe to. That is the world that I want to live in, where everyone has their fundamental human needs met, right? I would love to hear from you. If you have a positive vision of what the world could be in, I would absolutely love to hear it. Joe says, cheers, Tim. That is a great world to live in with you. I want this for everyone. Really, to me, this is what we are fighting for. I think it's really easy to fight against something. I think it's a lot harder to fight for something. And so if you share in that vision with me, I think that, let's just give some thought to the world that we want to live in. And then let's take this passion and that desire, and then let's actionalize it in our lives. Let's align our money with our values, which is what I'm going to end up on here. I'm seeing some beautiful visions in the chat. I want to see less concentration of wealth so that more people living below poverty line now can look after themselves and their friends and family. A world where children are seen and their futures are held top of mind for all decisions, and people taking climate change seriously. I want to live in a world where I don't have to invest because capitalism will be over and mutual aid reigns. Wouldn't it be nice if we didn't have to invest in order to have, security in retirement, to have, financial freedom without the need to be able to invest? Oh my goodness, that is a beautiful vision. A world that is compassionate, kind, and just for all of us. Oh my God, these words are just so beautiful. I love it. More people recognizing the leadership of these students taking action on divestment and showing their leadership, and more people understanding the value of this leadership. Oh my goodness, this is so beautiful. All right, let's get into action items. Action item number one, if you want it, we're going to take this passion and we're going to turn it into action. First step you got to do is ask, where's my money? This means, who are you doing your banking with? Who are your investments? What are you investing in? Right? At starting point is a baseline. Where's my money? Right? Let's look at it. Let's open our eyes. Let's take the blinders off. Let's dig our head out of the sand, and let's actually ask, where is my money? Action item number two is to learn more. Right? So coming to this webinar is a great start. Using these research tools, I've got some ways to be able to learn more. I've got some online courses that I'm going to be launching this summer that I'm really excited to share with you. But to me, education is such a critical step, so that number three, you can move your money. That really most of us by default settings have it in banks and in investments that are not aligned with our values. Right? So you need to do a little bit of learning around this stuff. And then, it's that empowerment to be able to actually move your money to make it aligned with your values so that you are investing in the world that you want to live in. The work that I do, this is sort of my little pitch. For my company, Good Investing, I have online courses. This is one of the most accessible ways that I help people invest according to their values. I'm going to be launching a couple of online courses this summer. So I'm going to be doing a mini course about how to fire your bank and join a credit union. And then I'm going to be doing another cohort of my Good Investing Foundations, which is really about providing that foundational knowledge, right, to be able to help you understand investments and how they work, going through these different doing less evil, doing more good approaches, and empowering you to be able to take that action to align your investments with your values. If you're at the point where like, Tim, I want to move on this right away, right, where I just want to get going, I have money, I don't like where it is, I want to plant that tree today, and I want to get moving, doing it one-on-one financial planning, everyone gets a free consultation with me. So I just want to invite you right now, if this is something you've been thinking about doing, doing, now is the time. I want you to book a free consultation with me. You can go to goodinvesting.com, right? You can book a free consultation with me. It's so easy, right? You can just see, you just do Tim, Nash. I'm going to book a meeting with myself, 416-821-9179. If anyone needs to text me, you can do that, right? Here we go. I'm in Canada, right? Here's my email, tim@goodinvesting.com. I'm going to book myself a meeting. I do have investments. I've got TFSA and spouses, TFSA and RSP. And then I'm going to say this was the Divestment from War webinar is what prompted me to reach out. And this allows me to actually go through and book my meeting. You can see I've got some availability. It looks like I'm mostly booked up for May. Oh my goodness, I am so busy these days. So we might have to do it into June. I'm going to book myself. Why don't I do Monday the 17th, and I'm going to do my last slot, and I'm just going to do my name and my email to book a free consultation. I will chat with anyone for half an hour. So please, book a free consultation with me. If you're ready to move on this right away, I can help you do this. This is what I do for a living. As well, if you just want to start wrapping your head around this, sign up for my newsletter. Yamini, if you can throw a little link to my newsletter in there. If you're not already on it, if you subscribe to this, if you registered, then I'm going to add you to my newsletter right away. You can unsubscribe if you don't want it. But for those watching on YouTube, or if the link got shared with you, if you're not on my newsletter, please join my newsletter. I'm going to have these online courses launching. I'm going to be doing more webinars. I'm really looking to up my game. I'm going to be doing a lot on impact investing and helping people divest. So who's ready to divest? Who's ready to do this? Right? It's really not that hard. I know it feels a little overwhelming with the research, but I'm here to help you do it. Right? Who's ready to take action with their investments? I would love to hear from you in the chat. If this webinar has inspired you to take some action, then let me know. Let us know. If you booked a meeting, a free consultation with me, or if you're going to, put it in the chat. Would love to see. I always love to see it when people have those bookings. Leah, I know it feels super hard. Don't let it feel super hard. I am here for you. I will make it as easy as I possibly can. And it's not that hard. And I want to be clear with my conclusion that divestment is important. I know it feels hard, but it's important to do it. I really want you to do it. And I know that the best time to plant a tree was 30 years ago. Really wish, would done this before. I should have divested a long time ago. The second best time is today. Let's plant these seeds right now. Really, really want you to do this. And I want to be clear, we're here to help. This is what I do. Yamini, you'll be hearing from her as well. We'll send little follow-ups. We're here to make it as easy as possible. Really, 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 appreciate you being here, and know that we are here to be able to help you. This is what we do at Good Investing. So I'm just so thrilled that you could join us. I see in the chat, oh my goodness, Devi booked a free consultation for your TFSA. Yes, can't wait to meet you and chat with you one-on-one. Ayeta, everyone, I've gone through this process with Tim, and I highly recommend it. Tim is an awesome partner in helping you do this. It was such a pleasure working with you. Thank you so much for coming today. Joe, Tim, I will see you in a meeting with your partner. Yes, I'm so excited to have that conversation. Yassi, thanks for this call. Let me know when or how you can share the platforms you mentioned. We're going to be sending out an email after with the recording, with the link, so you're going to get that all that information. And I would be so grateful if you did forward that on. Leslie says, love this. Thank you, Tim. Right. Mavis says, I learned a lot from Tim too. Talitha says, you're such a gift, Tim. Thank you so much for the information and services you provide. Eleanor says, thanks again, Tim. I'm so honored for those of you who attended. I recognize the time. I kind of nailed this right on the hour. So, I'm going to stick around for Q&A. I see a lot of people are jumping off. Thank you so much for participating. If you've got to run, no worries. I'm so grateful for you attending. I look forward to meeting more of you in free consultations. I'm excited for the courses and the upcoming webinars that you've got. You know, really, really, really happy. Oh my goodness. Lori, yes, take action. I'm so thrilled that so many of you are inspired. But let's kind of wrap up the formal part of this. I can stop sharing for now. And, you know, if people want to nerd out, if you want to go into the research, if you want to talk about the big banks, throw it in the chat now. You know, I'm happy to stick around for whatever, another 20 minutes or so. If people do have specific questions that you want to get into. Oh, Deb, this was informative and inspiring too. I'm so glad. Thank you so much. I feel like this was really such a great webinar. I'm really grateful for you attending, and you know, really hope that people leave this kind of feeling inspired to take some action to align with their values. Questions in the chat? Is everyone ready to go? You want to kind of, if you're on the West Coast, get on with your day. You know, if you're on, start your day. If you're here in Toronto, you know, happy to have you in the afternoon. Okay, you want me to talk about the big banks? Okay, yeah, I can totally do that. So it seems like this was kind of the big topic. Let me share my screen again, and I can talk to you about the big banks. Here we go. Okay, so big banks in Canada. Yeah, a lot of issues. So the biggest thing when it comes to the banks, it's tricky. They're kind of the two issues, right? The banks kind of two things. There's sort of the fossil fuels, and then there is the sort of connections to Israel and the wars. So first of all, let me just show you there is the Banking on Climate Chaos report that just came out. This is like hot off the press. So this is within the last week, the new report got launched. Okay, so this is like brand new. I'm downloading it for the first time. I haven't even looked at it. So this is basically like a reaction video, pretty much. But every year they do this, and they look at the banks and their investments in fossil fuels. And so what I want to do is they usually have a list. So these are the expansion plans of companies. So we can see that a lot of Canadian companies still planning to expand. And the question is, who is funding those expansion plans? And here we have the list of banks where RBC is going to feature prominently. Here's Scotia, here's TD, here's BMO, here's CIBC. So all five big Canadian banks are pretty high up on the list, and we can see their 2023 totals. So this is listed as the sort of total over the last however many years that is. But what we can do is we can look at the Royal Bank of Canada, which is here. And we can see that, you know, last year, I think they were very close to the top of the list. And now they're at 28 billion. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I can absolutely add the link in the chat. Here you go, Lori. Sarah, oh my goodness. I'm so happy. See you on June 6th. I'm thrilled. So, you know, the big banks are all in here. So this is on the fossil fuel side. There's just no debate. You know, TD, I think they were number one last year. I guess not. But they were, you know, certainly up there. So this is, you know, obviously the big banks, very, very big investors in fossil fuels, no question. When it comes to the bigger issues, you know, Canadian banks, and then a lot of people are looking to divest, you know, because of their involvement. So the big one that has been targeted is Scotia. So this is the big one. Now you can see here, oh, it looks like it worked. So Scotiabank cut stake in Israeli defense firm Elbit. Okay, it's not. So let me not do the National Post here. So here's BNN Bloomberg. So it looks like this is a case where whether it was engagement or threats of divestment did work. That Scotiabank cut its stake in Israeli defense firm Elbit as the war drags on. So they had been, you know, investing in this Elbit Systems Limited, right? And it looks like, okay, so now this is interesting. It trimmed its holdings. So it didn't eliminate it. It simply trimmed it, which means that it is still investing in this company. So as far as weapons go, you know, really the focus has been on Scotia, and I would say they budged, but I don't think they fully moved when it comes to this. So to me, it's about understanding, you know, there is a great video that I did. I did a presentation with a group called World Beyond War that was Fire Your Bank. And I think we can, let me see if I can find it. Was it here? World Beyond War? Where was it? Let me see if I can find it. I'll include it in the maybe the email, because I know that I do have it. It was break up with your bank. With your bank. Here it is. This is it. So, and you can see me here. I am sort of towards the end, but I'm just going to get rid of the time. But this is where we talked a lot about the banks. So there are three speakers. I'm the third speaker, right? But you know, really, really, really you know, would suggest watching this. Yeah, Noah, thank you for doing this. Yeah, this is, people are like, this is great. Thank you. Yeah, so people are on top of this. But in terms of the banks, I mean, I can talk about it a little bit, but really what it comes down to is like, watch this video. I think this does a great job going in depth. And I talk a lot about why you should break up with your bank and join a credit union. Really, really, really cool discussion that happened there. What I will say is that, you know, Karen, if your advisor is trying to get you to invest in these companies, don't invest through your bank. That this is, you know, please set up a free consultation with me. But that I find that at the banks, their investments, you know, the funds that they kind of try to sell you are not going to be ethically aligned. It's really hard to have those conversations. That really, you know, let's have a chat. Let's see whether you want to learn how to DIY, or we can get a new investment manager for you. But in my experience, specifically, you know, advisors at the banks have no knowledge about sustainability, about divestment. There are products that are available to them, but they don't know what they are, and they're not really going to speak to them very clearly or accurately. So, you know, would strongly suggest, if you are investing at a bank right now, that you're probably paying really high fees, and you're probably investing in things that aren't aligned with your values. Please come talk to me. Let's chat. I can do a little portfolio review. I can show you what's inside that portfolio. I want you to understand you do have options, and we can talk about those options to be able to make sure that your investments do align with your values. Okay, what do I think of Wealthsimple? Do I know of any red flags there? Oh my goodness, Yassine. Yeah, there are some red flags with Wealthsimple. It's not, I mean, you know, let me see. Let me see if I can do this in real time. This is going to be a little bit of a test. But let me see if I can share my screen. And I'm going to look up. So WSRI ETF. So this is the Wealthsimple, socially responsible, and let me see if they will give me an Excel spreadsheet. No, just does top holdings. Let me see if I can. So I did a very in-depth review of Wealthsimple. Let's see. Oh, maybe. Now this is as of August 3rd. Now, so this is very old data. I can get a list of the companies, but we would have to manually. It doesn't look like I'm able to. Let me see if I can just get the full index here. Index composition. Oh, this looks helpful. Does it let me download it? Darn it. So I would have to dig in a little bit deeper, but what I can show you is portfolio review Wealthsimple. So here we go. So this is where I have where I did do a research. Now, this was last summer that I did this, and I just don't have it from a weapons you know, perspective. What I do have is from a fossil fuel perspective. And I just went through a really, really detailed, I think this is going to be like another video where I can go through this in detail. But this is where what I found, okay, is that there is inside of the Wealthsimple ETF, this North American Green Bond Index ETF, which green bond sounds great, right? Green bond sounds amazing. This is financing green projects. Unfortunately, the exclusions used in their fossil fuel-free equity funds are not applied to the bond fund. This means that energy companies can still qualify and be verified so long as they show that the proceeds are being used for green projects. For example, utilities that burn coal and or natural gas can issue green bonds for the development of renewable energy projects. These green bonds may help companies finance their transition away from fossil fuels, but it does leave the investor loaning to companies with a large carbon footprint. The investor still holds the transition risk that could result from the quick shift away from fossil fuels. So they're like coal companies inside of their green bond fund. And, I think I will have to do probably a different, see if I can get Excel spreadsheets to be able to send that through. I know that I can get the data. I would just have to put it into an Excel. It's going to require a little bit of work on my end. But, if you want that, I can totally do it. I think it's time for me to kind of like talk to Wealthsimple. I've been sitting on this for a little while and hesitating doing like a pointed, presentation on that, but I do think it's time. So, Wealthsimple, it's good. It's a great step in the right direction. It's not perfect. And there are a few, I would say, red flags, at least from a climate perspective. And I think, as part of a more thorough review, I'm happy to take their holdings and throw it through that investigate screen. Stay tuned on that. Let's see if we can push them. Okay, +1 for deep Wealthsimple SRI examination. All right, if y'all want it, I can do it. I'm happy to do that. All right, what else do we have here? Okay, great. I use Modern Advisor and SRI funds, but it's limited. Yeah, a lot of these, it's kind of a one size fits all. I asked them back in October if they plan to withdraw from funds invested in Israel, which we've learned is not enough because they take it to mean Israeli companies. Because they did this right away from Russia, they told me no, not a peep from them since. It's going to be really hard. If you're using Modern Advisor, Helen, it wouldn't be that hard to shift you to, this is what's called a robo-advisor. I do have a system on Questrade plus Passive, Passiv. I call it a build your own robo-advisor. So there might actually be an opportunity for us to be able to clean up your portfolio, but still keep it nice and simple for you. So happy to chat with you more about that if you want. I have an investment with TD because it's fine to hard ETFs that are RDSPs. Are you aware of any RDSP offerings in Questrade or credit unions? Ayetta, this has been so frustrating for me that the only other RDSP broker or the only other broker that offers RDSP is National Bank. So we could look at switching to National Bank. I don't know if it's worth it. I do, sadly, my suggestion for people who do have RDSPs is still like, use TD and then let's be intentional about the ETF that we hold inside of TD, which I think we've done with you. So, happy to verify that and just to make sure there, but that sadly, there just aren't other good options when it comes to RDSPs. There's a huge gap in the marketplace there. CU asks any info on Alterna and Qtrade. So yeah, Alterna is a great credit union. I like them. I do my business banking through Alterna, so I do love Alterna. Qtrade is owned by the credit unions, which is awesome. I love Qtrade. That said, it can be a little bit tricky doing more complex portfolios through Qtrade, which is why, I manage my money using Questrade plus Passive. I love that Passive. It's like kind of automating that rebouncing process. So we can totally do that, but I don't have any red flags ethically for Alterna nor Qtrade. Always things that I would improve upon if I was in charge and could give them suggestions, but certainly no ethical red flags. Right, okay. So government bonds. Mavis asks about government bonds. Woo, my goodness. This is tricky. So yeah, so when it comes to government bonds, like, yeah, you're loaning money to the federal government and that part of their spending is on military, whether it's the Canadian military buying weapons or whether it's foreign funding, they absolutely do that. So when we do buy federal government bonds, part of our money, a little fraction, absolutely, is going to be complicit in war. So the option that I do have that, and again, we can chat more about this and how this kind of fits in, but if that is a red flag, a deal breaker, is that there are provincial bond ETFs. So like ZPL. So ZPL is the BMO Long Provincial Bond Index ETF. Again, this is offered by BMO. We're not loaning money to BMO though, okay? They're just the ones, they're what are called the ETF provider. So they're the ones that are offering this ETF. What's inside this ETF are provincial bonds. This is the long-term provincial bond ETF. There is also a medium-term bond ETF and a short-term bond ETF. So this is a way around it. If we want to do government bonds, but we don't want to support the Canadian government. I got this request a lot when Harper was PM, right? but that what we can do is do provincial bonds instead. I get it. It's Doug Ford. Our provinces aren't necessarily led by great politicians right now, but when we look at provincial government spending, it's overwhelmingly healthcare, education, like highways, like transportation, right? And they're not involved in international conflicts, that there's very little, if any, military spending from provincial bonds. There is also a funny municipal bond ETF that exists in Canada. So yeah, this is, hold on, Boyd. And let me see here, Canada. I think it's like Horizons. Yeah, Global X. All the Horizons ETF have been rebranded as Global X. So this is the Global X Active Canadian Municipal Bond ETF, which is very, very interesting. So again, you know, I'm not worried about any military involvement here, but this would be municipal governments, mostly Quebec. I think that Quebec, you know, is one of the only, yeah, so a little bit of provincial in here. That's interesting. But like Montreal City, Longueuil City, Saint Felix de Valois, right, that it's mostly Quebec municipalities that are able to issue municipal bonds. So there are options for you. It gets a little bit dicey if we want to divest from the federal government, but we can totally do it. Annalise, thank you so much. Amazing webinar. Wish I could stay till the end. We'll tune into the YouTube video, right? Fantastic. Right. Roy says, thanks, Tim. Keep up the great work. More research on who funds the military industrial complex is needed. Ayeta says, I wish Passive would make an app. I know it's not. Maybe we can request it from them, but it is sort of the desktop. Yeah. How are we doing? Any last questions? I feel like this was a really good webinar. I'm absolutely thrilled. I'm so grateful for everyone. If any last minute questions, otherwise, you know, you can always email me, tim@goodinvesting.com. Lori says we need more credit union options in Quebec. I agree. Desjardins has a bit of a monopoly on the credit unions in Quebec. Debbie, thank you so much for attending. Helen, thank you. I'm so grateful sticking to the end. Everyone who stuck around at the end, I can't tell you how warm my heart is. You know, just so grateful. Really appreciate you being here and watching this. Have a great afternoon, everyone. We'll see you on the next webinar. Stay in touch. Have a great day. All the best. Bye.